You get paid on Friday. By Monday, half of it feels gone. You open your bank app, scroll through the transactions, and nothing looks crazy. There are no shopping sprees in your history. Nobody booked a flight to Miami. The charges are just groceries, gas, a few taps on your phone, maybe dinner with a friend. Normal life. But then you do the math. You earned about $4,200 after taxes last month. Rent took $1,400. Your car payment grabbed another $530. So you should have had over $2,200 left to work with. Except you didn't. Somehow, you ended the month with $114 in checking and a credit card balance that quietly climbed by $380. Where did it go? I know that feeling because I've lived it. A few years ago, I sat down one Sunday night to figure out why I always felt broke, even though my income wasn't terrible. I made a spreadsheet, tracked everything for 30 days straight. What I found made me nauseous. I was bleeding over $1,100 a month on habits I thought were harmless. Tiny purchases, small recurring charges, decisions that seemed so minor in the moment that my brain literally filed them as free. They weren't free. They were the reason I couldn't save, the reason my emergency fund stayed empty, the reason I secretly panicked every time an unexpected bill showed up. Here's what nobody tells you about being broke. For most people, it isn't one big mistake. There's no single villain draining your account. Instead, it's 15 small ones. 15 everyday habits so baked into your routine that they feel like breathing. You don't question them. You don't even notice them. They just quietly move money out of your life, month after month, year after year, until one day you look up at 40 and wonder why you have nothing saved. That's what we're going to talk about today. 15 everyday habits that are keeping you broke without you even realizing it. Some of these will feel obvious once I say them out loud. Others might genuinely make you uncomfortable because you'll realize you did one of them this morning. Stick around for all 15 because the last one is the habit that holds every other habit in place. It's the root. Fix that one and the other 14 start fixing themselves. Let's get into it. Ordering delivery as your default dinner plan. I'm not talking about the occasional Friday night when you're exhausted and a pizza sounds perfect. That's a treat, and treats are fine. What I'm talking about is the 3 times a week habit that creeps in so gradually you forget it ever started as an exception. My friend Marcus used to joke that DoorDash was his personal chef. He'd order a burrito bowl for $28 and feel like he'd kept it reasonable. Except that $28 bowl never actually costs $28. By the time you add the delivery fee, the service fee, the tip, and the sneaky menu markup that restaurants build into app prices, that bowl runs closer to $42. The same meal made at home costs about $6 in ingredients. According to Upgraded Points, the average American now spends over $1,500 a year on food delivery services alone. That's $1,500 going to platform fees and delivery markups. To convenience, put that same $1,500 into an index fund earning 8% over 20 years, and it grows to roughly $7,400 from one habit, one app on your phone that you tap without thinking while you watch TV. The subscription pile you forgot about. Here's a number that should make you set this video to full screen. The average American spends $219 a month on subscriptions, but thinks they spend $86. That gap of $133 a month adds up to nearly $1,600 a year in charges you literally do not know you're paying. Netflix, Spotify, that meditation app you used twice in January, the cloud storage upgrade you needed for one project 6 months ago, the gym membership at a place you haven't visited since daylight saving time changed. A 2026 report found that the average household added 2.5 new subscriptions last year, while only canceling 1.2. That math only goes in one direction, and it never goes in yours. Pull up your bank statement right now. I'm serious. Count every recurring charge. I did this exercise 2 years ago, expecting to find maybe 6 subscriptions. I found 14. 3 of them were for services I genuinely could not name when I saw the charge. Buying brand names when the generic version is chemically identical. This one is subtle because branding works at a level below conscious thought. You reach for Advil instead of ibuprofen, Tylenol instead of acetaminophen. Here's what the FDA will tell you if you bother to look it up. Generic medications are required to have the same active ingredient, the same dosage, the same route of administration, the same strength as the brand version, identical by law. Yet the branded version often costs 40 to 60% more. My coworker Priya started switching to generics across the board about a year ago. Cleaning products, pantry staples, over-the-counter medications, basic toiletries. She tracked the savings for 6 months and was stunned. The average family overspends by roughly $1,300 a year on brand loyalty alone. Nobody ever built wealth because they chose Clorox over store-brand bleach that contains the exact same sodium hypochlorite solution. Impulse buying. This one stings because almost everyone thinks they have it under control. Americans spent an average of $282 a month on impulse purchases in 2024, according to data from Capital One Shopping and Slick Deals. That's $3,381 a year on things they never planned to buy, didn't budget for, had no intention of purchasing when they left the house that morning. Behavioral economists at Duke University found that roughly 40% of what we do every day isn't even a conscious decision. It's automatic behavior, habitual loops running underneath your awareness. That explains why 89% of shoppers admit to making impulse buys and why clothing is the #1 impulse category, followed by food, then household items. The layout of your grocery store, the end cap displays, the checkout aisle arrangements, all of it is literally engineered to exploit those loops. Let me do the math on what that costs over time. $282 a month at 7% over 25 years turns into roughly $215,000. That's a down payment on a house in most American cities, spent on things you can't even remember owning 3 weeks later. The daily convenience tax, a $6 coffee, a $3.50 sparkling water from the gas station, a $9 smoothie because you skipped breakfast and your stomach was growling by 10 a.m. Your brain processes these completely differently than a $200 purchase. Neuroscientists call this the peanuts effect, where amounts below a certain threshold don't trigger the pain of paying response. $6 doesn't hurt, it barely registers. But $6 a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year is $1,500. That's a full Roth IRA contribution for someone just starting out. That's your future compounding for decades, except it tastes like oat milk and disappears by noon. I'm not saying never buy coffee. I still buy coffee. What I am saying is make it a choice instead of a reflex. Brew at home 4 days a week. Treat yourself on Fridays. That one shift alone saves over $1,200 a year without changing your quality of life in any meaningful way. But let me pause here because I know what some of you might be thinking. This sounds like the same tired advice. Stop buying lattes, cancel Netflix, eat rice and beans forever. I hear you, and that's not what this is. I'm not telling you to deprive yourself into misery. I'm telling you to pay attention. There's a massive difference between spending money on purpose and spending money on autopilot. The first one is living your life. The second one is funding someone else's quarterly earnings. Now let's talk about a habit that costs way more than coffee ever could: eating out as your social life. There's a version of this habit that feels impossible to break because it's tangled up with friendships, dating, identity, and the way your entire generation socializes. Dinner with friends at the new Thai place. Brunch on Saturday because everyone's going. Happy hour after work because it feels rude to say no. The National Restaurant Association data shows Americans spend roughly $3,900 a year on food away from home. For people in their 20s and 30s, that number skews significantly higher because dining out is how their entire social infrastructure functions. The Bureau of Labor Statistics breaks it down further. About 39% of the average household's food budget, roughly $3,965 a year, goes specifically to restaurants, takeout, and delivery. That's almost $4,000 a year just on meals you didn't cook. My friend Jenna tracked her restaurant spending for 1 quarter and hit $4,100 in 3 months. She was horrified. She didn't feel like she was eating out that much. It just accumulated. Tuesday tacos, Tuesday sushi, Saturday brunch, Sunday farmers market lunch. Each one felt small in isolation. Together, they were eating her savings alive. Here's what I've learned though. The friends who actually matter will come to your apartment for homemade pasta and a $9 bottle of wine from Trader Joe's. The people who refuse to hang out unless it involves a $75 dinner reservation aren't investing in the friendship. They're investing in the experience. You can cut dining out in half and lose exactly 0 real relationships. The ones worth keeping survive a home-cooked meal. Upgrading your tech every single cycle. Apple releases a new iPhone every September. Samsung drops a Galaxy every February. The upgrades between generations are incremental, sometimes barely perceptible to anyone except a tech reviewer filming a side-by-side comparison. Yet millions of people trade in a perfectly functional phone for the newest model every 12 to 18 months. On a financing plan, that runs $35 to $65 a month in perpetuity. You never actually own the device. You're renting a screen. Over a decade, that habit costs between $5,000 and $9,000 compared to keeping a phone for 3 to 4 years, which is roughly how long most modern devices are actually built to last. The same logic applies to laptops, tablets, earbuds, and smartwatches. Apple's entire ecosystem is designed to make last year's product feel insufficient. It almost never is. Your 2023 phone does everything your 2026 phone does, just without the new camera zoom level you'll use 4 times at a birthday party. Never negotiating a single bill. Your internet provider charges you $89 a month. Your car insurance renewed at $225. Your credit card APR sits at 22%. Most people pay these numbers every single month without ever picking up the phone because the idea of calling and asking for a lower rate feels awkward or confrontational. Here's what companies know that most people don't. They have retention departments, entire teams of people whose job is literally to keep you from leaving by offering a lower rate or throwing in a credit. A 2025 Consumer Reports survey found that 70% of people who called to negotiate a bill actually got a reduction. 70%. The average savings was $100 or more per year per bill. Across your internet, phone, insurance, and credit card accounts, that's $400 to $800 a year recovered in a few mildly uncomfortable phone calls. Your discomfort is a product. Companies budget for it. Every month you don't call is a month they profit from your silence, only paying the minimum on your credit cards. This is the habit that doesn't just keep you broke, it mathematically guarantees you stay there for years. The average American carries around $6,500 in credit card debt at a 22.4% APR right now. According to Federal Reserve data, total U.S. credit card debt hit $1.277 trillion by the end of 2025. That's trillion with a T. If you pay only the minimum on a $6,500 balance at that rate, it takes over 18 years to pay it off completely. Over that time, you'll pay more than $9,000 in interest alone. That means you end up spending roughly $15,500 for $6,500 worth of purchases. You pay for everything twice, then pay a little extra on top for the privilege. Nearly half of American credit card holders carry a revolving balance month to month right now. Among millennials and Gen X, that number climbs to 53%. A Bankrate 2026 survey found something that genuinely alarmed me. 49% of Americans now describe credit card debt as normal. Not unfortunate, not something to fix, just normal. The normalization of paying 22% interest on last month's groceries might be the most expensive cultural shift of our generation. Let me step back here and connect something, because this is the point where I need you to see the larger pattern. Several of the habits I've described share a common architecture. Minimum payments are set low on purpose. Subscription cancellation processes are made difficult on purpose. Delivery apps bury the true cost of your order on purpose. Phone upgrades are marketed on an annual cycle on purpose. You are not weak for falling into these patterns. You're a normal human being navigating a consumer economy that spent over $360 billion on advertising last year, specifically to ensure you keep spending without stopping to think. The question is whether you're going to keep sleepwalking through it or wake up and start making intentional choices instead. Lifestyle creep after every raise. Here's a pattern I see constantly, and it's one of the most heartbreaking because people genuinely think they're winning while it's happening to them. You get a promotion. Your salary jumps from $55,000 to $65,000. That's an extra $10,000 a year, roughly $625 more per month after taxes. Within 90 days, a nicer apartment absorbs some of it. A car upgrade takes a chunk. An elevated wardrobe handles the rest. 6 months later, your monthly expenses have risen to match your new income perfectly, and you feel exactly as broke as you did before the raise. You just have a nicer sofa to sit on while you stress about bills. Researchers call this hedonic adaptation. Your brain adjusts to any new spending baseline within about 3 months, which means the pleasure from that upgraded apartment fades completely, but the $300 higher rent stays on your ledger permanently. Rachel, a teacher I know in Ohio, got a $12,000 raise in 2024. She kept her same apartment, her same car, her same weekly budget. She put the entire difference into her 403b. At average market returns, that single decision will be worth over $500,000 by the time she retires. Same everyday life, completely different financial future. $10,000 a year at 8% over 20 years grows to roughly $494,000. That's the price tag of lifestyle creep. That's what it quietly costs you every time your spending rises to match your income. Financing a car you can't actually afford. The average new car payment in America hit $767 a month at the end of 2025, according to Experian. Let me say that again because it deserves to land. $767 every month. For a depreciating asset that loses roughly 20% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. Meanwhile, the average after-tax monthly salary in the U.S. sits at about $4,865. That means the typical new car payment eats nearly 16% of take-home pay, well above the 10% ceiling that most financial planners recommend as a maximum. More drivers than ever now carry monthly payments above $1,000. The loan terms keep stretching too. 84-month auto loans are becoming normalized. 7 years of payments on something that's worth half what you owe by year 3. My neighbor David drives a 2019 Honda Civic he bought used for $14,000. Paid it off in 3 years with a $300 monthly payment. His coworker Tyler leased a new BMW at $840 a month. They work in the same department, earn the same salary. 5 years from now, David will have invested the $540 monthly difference into roughly $45,000 in brokerage assets. Tyler will have a different lease on a slightly newer BMW and nothing to show for the previous one. If you took a $767 monthly payment and instead drove a reliable used car at $300 a month, that $467 difference invested at 7% over 30 years becomes roughly $566,000. Your car choice might be the single most expensive everyday decision on this entire list. Most people never frame it that way because everyone around them is doing the same thing. Using buy now, pay later to afford things you otherwise couldn't. BNPL services exploded over the past few years because they make a $200 purchase feel like 4 easy installments of $50. Sounds harmless until you look at the behavioral data underneath. 42% of BNPL users made at least one late payment in 2025, up from 34% just 2 years earlier. Late fees stack fast. Credit reporting agencies are beginning to factor BNPL into credit profiles. Users of these services spend approximately 6% more per transaction than people who pay outright because splitting the cost tricks your brain into underweighting the total commitment. Here's what no Klarna ad will ever explain to you. If you need 4 payments to afford a $200 jacket, you cannot afford the jacket. That's the definition of the word. BNPL doesn't create affordability. It creates the feeling of affordability while quietly training your spending habits to stretch beyond what your income can support. Every installment plan you sign up for is a small vote for the version of you that consistently spends more than they have, treating every windfall like bonus money to blow. Tax refund hits your account, birthday cash from grandma arrives, a quarterly bonus shows up in your paycheck. What happens in the next 10 days? Brunch, a shopping trip, a spontaneous weekend getaway. The money evaporates because it never felt like real money in the first place. It felt like a gift from the universe, separate from your regular financial life. Behavioral economists call this mental accounting. We categorize money differently depending on where it came from. Even though $1 from your tax refund spends exactly like $1 from your paycheck. The average tax refund in 2025 was around $3,100. For most American households, that's one of the largest single deposits they'll receive all year. Invested annually at 8%, that $3,100 turns into roughly $152,000 over 20 years. Instead, it usually transforms into a couch from Wayfair, a long weekend somewhere warm, and a vague memory of feeling flush for about a week. Take 10% of any windfall and treat yourself. Make it genuinely memorable. Then, redirect the other 90% somewhere that compounds while you sleep. Future you is begging present you to do this. They're sending signals backwards through time every single moment you feel anxious about retirement. This next one is the habit almost nobody discusses because it's less about what you spend and more about what you refuse to look at. Choosing to remain blind to where your money actually goes. 47% of Americans entered 2026 without a budget, according to YouGov data. Among those who do budget, the most common reason isn't building wealth or planning for the future. It's making sure they have enough to cover essentials like rent and groceries, just surviving the month. But tracking your spending does something that a basic budget never will. It reveals the emotional architecture behind your patterns. You spend more on Tuesdays because that's your most stressful workday. You spend more the week after a fight with your partner. You spend more in the first 3 days after payday because the dopamine hit of a full account makes you feel temporarily wealthy and your brain instinctively wants to celebrate. My own tracking revealed something I never would have guessed without the data. I spent more on food delivery during weeks when I felt lonely. The orders weren't driven by hunger, they were driven by emotion. The food was a symptom, the loneliness was the cause. Once I saw that pattern in black and white on a spreadsheet, I couldn't unsee it. The deliveries slowed down on their own because I finally understood what was actually happening. A spreadsheet takes 10 minutes a week, 40 minutes a month in exchange for complete clarity on where every dollar in your life actually goes. People who track spending consistently save 15 to 20% more than people who don't, according to multiple behavioral finance studies. 10 minutes a week. That's less time than you spent scrolling your phone in the bathroom today. Now the last one. This is the habit underneath all the other habits, the one that makes every single item on this list possible. Waiting until you make more money before learning how money actually works. This is the most expensive habit in America, and it costs nothing at all to break. We tell ourselves a story, and it sounds perfectly reasonable when we say it out loud. Once I get that raise, I'll start investing. Once I pay off this card, I'll figure out retirement accounts. Once things settle down, I'll sit and actually learn this stuff. Except things never settle down. The raise comes, and lifestyle creep devours it before you notice. The credit card gets paid off, and a new balance materializes within months. The calm season you're waiting for never arrives because that's not how adult life works. The learning gets pushed to next month, then next quarter, then next year, then next decade. Then one morning you're 53 and you have a 401k with $11,000 in it and a knot in your stomach. Here's what haunts me about this pattern. There is a direct, measurable, scientifically documented relationship between financial literacy and financial outcomes. People who understand compound interest behave differently with their money because once you've seen what happens when 8% works for you over 30 years, paying 22% to a credit card company feels physically painful. People who understand how APRs actually function stop making minimum payments because the math becomes so obvious it's impossible to look away from. People who truly grasp the difference between an asset and a liability Stop financing $50,000 depreciating vehicles on 84-month terms because they can finally see the opportunity cost in concrete numbers. Every single habit I've described in this video, every one of the 15, shrinks dramatically or disappears entirely when someone genuinely understands how money works. Financial literacy isn't something you earn after you're already wealthy. It's not a reward for figuring it out on your own. It's the thing that makes figuring it out possible in the first place. It's the starting line, and most people spend their entire lives thinking it's the finish line. The person I described at the beginning of this video, the one staring at their bank app on a Monday morning, wondering where $2,200 went, that was me. Several years of my life, that was me every single month. The difference between that version of me and the person talking to you right now isn't a bigger salary. My income didn't change for a long time after I started turning things around. What changed was that I stopped guessing and started learning the rules of the game I was already playing. The rules were always there. I just never bothered to read them. So if you're sitting here right now and you recognized yourself in 3 or 4 or maybe 8 of these habits, that's not something to feel ashamed about. Honestly, it's the opposite. It means you're paying attention, maybe for the first time in a while. It means the fog is starting to clear. It means you're closer to changing than you realize, because awareness is always the first thing that has to happen before anything else can shift. The math is simple once you see it. You don't need to earn more money to stop being broke. You need to stop quietly losing the money you already earn. Once you understand that, genuinely understand it the way you understand gravity, everything changes. The habits start falling away because they suddenly look like what they always were. Small daily choices that were costing you a fortune while pretending to cost nothing. Money isn't complicated. It's just unforgiving to people who never bother to learn how it works.